The other thing now is, when you first started, you were a lone ranger.
Right.
Nobody really knew who you were outside of some obscure endurance places and half-heard truths of these weird myths.
Right.
But now you've got people's expectations layered on top as well. So not only have you got to deal with success potentially making you soft, so you've got to cap that. You've got to say no to more money and opportunities and cool people.
Right.
You've also got this extra layer of expectation that's coming through from other people too. And I think that you talk about trained humility in the new book too. I've got to presume that that fits into this equation.
Right, it fits in big time. And that's one big reason why I do fight fire. Because all the knowledge for myself comes from that place. It doesn't come from the place of success. My knowledge does not come from the place of, because for me, I built Goggins from the ground up. I was born David Goggins. David Goggins wasn't good enough. He was a scared, bullied, abused kid who struggled in life. And that kid, whenever something got tough, no matter how hard I trained, no matter how ready I was, whenever something got tough for me, David Goggins, the real David Goggins, would come out and he would quit. So I realized this over a period of time. So I had to build Goggins. And in that process, I had to go back to that mental lab. And that mental lab is at scratch. That mental lab is in that trained humility. And so that's where I get better. I get better when I'm digging holes in the ground, when I'm waking up early knowing I don't have to do these things. That's where I get better.
So it's important to stay hungry.
It's important to stay hungry, but it's important more to stay humble within that hunger. So while you're hungry, a lot of people are hungry, but humility is everything.
What was that story about William Crawford, the janitor?
Yeah. So this guy won the Medal of Honor. So he won the Medal of Honor, and which is the highest award in the military. And this guy went to the Air Force Academy, and he was a janitor. And no one knew who the fuck this man was. He had the highest award in all the military for heroics. For heroics, saving lives, putting his life on the line. Could have been killed. And he is now basically, cleaning shitters for young kids. And we can all imagine how that probably went. There's probably some, little bit of taunting here and there. And he just sat there and cleaned the shitter. So that's why he's in my trained humility part, because for this man to be at the level he was and have that kind of humility to go, I'm a Medal of Honor winner, but I'm gonna put that in my closet, and I'm gonna pick up my broom and dustpan, and I'm gonna pick up, this rag and clean this shit for these young men. That right there is amazing for me, man. That's where you grow. That's growth, huge growth. And also it shows that he was doing his job. He was a servant. He didn't look at himself any better than anybody else. And the second you do that, you totally lost. You cannot look at yourself like people with me even. I always look at people. I know where you are. I know where, because I've been there. That's why I help so many people out. I've never been above you. I've always pretty much been beneath you, and that's where my knowledge came from. So I know how to reach those people who are in the dungeon, because I've been there so many times.
Speaking of getting too soft, did you see that there was a news story that came out recently about the treatment of SEALs during their selection process? Do you see this?
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, they were getting sprayed with tear gas whilst they were on the ground, and they were made to sing happy birthday so that they couldn't hold their breath while it was happening. Right. And there was a quote from this guy, I think this type of training is really senseless, said Sven Hjort, a Duke University associate professor who studies tear gas and its effects. It looks more like a form of hazing.
Right. I see all that. Trust me. Like I said, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I understand that guy. I understand exactly where you're coming from. That is your personal opinion, and I totally get that. But there's very few people in this world who want to do a job like that. And it takes a different kind of mindset. Is it tear gas appropriate? I don't know. How hard that training is, I don't expect anybody to understand it, but 1%. But the loud voices of this world, are the 99% who don't understand exactly what you have to do. That's why when I speak and you don't understand me, it's probably a good thing. Because that probably means I'm in an area of life that you're not in, which is fine. That's why I don't judge people. And this guy right here judging that, unless you've been there and done that, and you really can't speak about it unless you're in those situations that are so hard that takes a special human being to get through them.
I think it's the same kind of feeling that I get when I heard about Elon Musk telling the employees at Twitter, we're going to ask you to work harder than you've ever worked in your life.
Yeah.
This is a place, Twitter is now a company where people can go if they want to be in the top 0.0001% of hardworking programmers and software developers on the planet.
That's right.
And everybody was up in arms. This is unbelievable. We're going back to this old version of capitalism where the worker is being abused and used and thrown away. What they didn't account for is that there is a non-insignificant cohort of people for whom that's their dream.
That's right.
People who want to be able to get up in the morning, having gone to bed 4 hours before, and can contribute to some sort of progress that they think, this is what I'm here for.
Yep.
And it's the same with the SEALs. If you're not the sort of person that is built to go through selection, it's like speaking a different language.
That's it. And that's why I don't try to convince people otherwise. I understand that why you're confused. I understand why you say things like that. I'm not saying anything bad about that. I understand it. But also, what you don't understand, what you fail to understand, is the other side, that you need people like that. You need the Elon Musks. You need the David Goggins. You need some of these Navy SEALs, some of these other people. You need those people. And they forget that. And it takes a very, very unique person and unique mind to do some of these jobs that are necessary in this world.
But especially when we're thinking about someone going to war.
Right.
Like, do you want your armed forces to be underprepared for the battlefield because you didn't want to be too mean to them in advance?
That's the problem. That's the problem. And that's a problem that I've always had. Is that right there. Is that with even some of the most trained people in the world fall back on that. It's easy to talk about. Like I said, when you go through it once, it's a perishable skill. Hardness, mental hardening, mental toughness, it's a perishable skill. Just because you went through some training once and you got through it, doesn't mean it lasts fucking forever. And that's where most people hated me in my life, because I realized that. You don't just say, oh, I got it, I'm checked off, I'm good for the rest of my life. That's why you have recall. You recall on fucking everything. And you definitely must recall when it comes to the mind. That is one of the biggest requalifications you must have. And when you're at that level, you got to recall every fucking day, not once a year.
One of the other things that you did to stop yourself from getting soft was running the Moab 240.
Yep.
Talk me through that experience.
So, I hadn't run a 100-mile race, and I think it was about 6 years. I had, some heart surgeries. I had maybe some questioning in my mind about, I call it part-time savage. I started kind of going through this. I started getting, a little bit injuries, a little bit of this, a little bit, things that back in the day never slowed me down. So when I got my head out of my ass and realized that, hey, we have more left, we can still push harder, we're not there yet. I realized, talking to a guy named Cameron Haynes, who did this race, 240-mile race. And I go, is this the new level? Is this the new push? So when I decided to do that race, it was in the back of my mind like, man, I've really become an expert at running 100-mile races. So for me, this was the new level, the 200+ mile race. And what was so amazing about that, as you probably read in the book, I had a hard time the first time doing it. I came back and did better, but what's amazing about the human mind is that it becomes your new norm. Like to think that I can run 200 miles, 240 miles, and that becomes like running 50. I never thought that was possible. This is why I'm always pushing that limit, because I know that within pushing these limits, there's always more. So I end up doing like almost like back-to-back 200-mile runs. When the 200-mile race, 240-mile race was hard at once, it became something that was very easy after I figured it out. So that's why that happened.